so excited that you guys have decided to tune into the show today. If this is your first time ever watching this show, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so excited for our author that's going to be on the show today. Like I said, if this is your first time ever tuning into the show, let me just give you my spiel. So all of our contact information is in the description box. Make sure you go ahead and follow our Facebook pages. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you truly enjoy the shows that I produce, make sure you also visit my GoFundMe page as well as my PayPal, and you can give a financial gift. I will also love for you to follow me on my Instagram page. Tracey will also like you to follow her on her Instagram page as well. So, Tracey, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
You are welcome. So, Tracey, if you can go ahead and just let the viewers know a little bit more about yourself, that would be great.
Well, as you know, my name is Tracey. I am an apostle in the Lord's kingdom. I'm also an author and a counselor and teacher. And one of the things that I try to do is to train leaders to be able to not only go forward with the things that God has called them to do, but also to maintain their health so that they don't die while trying to do what it is they were sent here to do.
So, and it's hard. It's so hard, especially to just keep that mental balance with it all.
Right. Right.
Especially when you are trying to become the person that God created you to become, and also do the things that you feel that you were called to do.
Absolutely.
We have Nikita that's actually watching the show. Nikita, what's up? How you doing, girl? Thank you so much for all the love and likes and sharing this video. If you're watching the show with Nikita, I see that we got some more people watching. Don't hide, y'all. Go ahead and tell us hello. Tell us hello. And go ahead and share this video as well. If you're just now joining us, I actually have author Tracey George on the show today, Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. And she has written a book called The Blessed Place. So, Tracey, if you can just let us know, why did you decide to actually write your book, The Blessed Place?
Well, piggybacking off of what I said about so you don't die while trying to do this, death can come in the form of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so I found myself not resting well. And I found myself not really enjoying what it was that God called me to do. And so the Lord had to take me on a journey where I began to learn what the importance was of having that blessed place where I consider my time with God so special that it actually fuels me and it replenishes those things that I may be depleted of at the time because I am doing the Lord's work. And a lot of times we don't take into consideration what happens when your body is wore down or when you are just extremely tired, because at the time I was working and in ministry, whether during the time I was in the military, during the time that I was in school, all these different things. So you're doing a lot for a lot of people. You're doing stuff for yourself, for your family, a lot on your shoulders. And so prayer to me was just simply communication with God. I didn't consider it was also a place where he could refuel me and help me to kind of gain my composure and not lose myself while doing his work.
When did you decide to start a ministry and working for the Lord?
Oh my gosh, I was a kid. I was a little kid. The earliest recollection, I was about 18 months old. My mother would teach me stuff and I would repeat it. And then somewhere between 3 and 5, my mother said, okay, now we're going to take it to the next level. And my first service, if you will, was, I was about 5. I was under the carport. My father was at the military at the time. We were in Florida. And some of my friends came over to play. And I want to say it was the summer because it was early up in the day. And they came and I started talking to them about Jesus and salvation and
Mm-hmm.
did they want to receive the Holy Ghost. And the next thing I know, I had napkins and tissue and newspaper, and I was out there doing what I saw my mother doing and
Uh-huh.
what I believed was in my heart. My mother heard them. They were out there crying and everything, but I didn't understand the gift or what was going on. My
Mm-hmm.
mother came to the door and said, "Baby, go play. We'll talk later."
Mm-hmm.
And so I helped them dry their faces. We went and played, and that really started the shift of realizing that there was something there that God wanted me to do. And when the spirit would rev up or the atmosphere was conducive, I found myself being moved in such a way that sometimes I would just cry because I just couldn't really fathom what was going on. Of course, as I got older, I understood more, but it really started kicking in when I was a kid.
So when was it during that time though, when you felt that you weren't really, enjoying that time with the Lord, although you were in ministry, and what really prompted you to write a book like this?
I was in the military and my marriage was over,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the throes of trauma. Um, I had already lost my brother, and so it wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
the the stuff that they don't tell you about the wilderness experiences, those things were now appearing to me. It used to be my mother's testimony, my
Mm-hmm.
grandmother's testimony, my godmother's testimony, my godfather's testimony. But all of a sudden now, it was my testimony. The issues of life were really showing up. I was in my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking, this shouldn't be happening to me now. I shouldn't be experiencing these kind of turmoils
Mm.
in my life because I was under the guideline that if you did what God told you to do,
That's
then
good.
the joy of God would be yours. But
Yeah.
I didn't understand that joy. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. It comes after the weeping. And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't understand that. So God was allowing this opportunity to teach me that trauma happens to everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
it's how you process through it. And so this became the teaching that he gave me. And I said, if I was having such issue with this, then who else is
That's good.
having an issue with this same thing? Realizing the transition from being a babe in Christ to really learning that he really wants to use you. And it's not going to come just simply because you opened your mouth, but there will be experiences, things
Mm.
that you face that people will be able to relate to. Jesus, the flesh of God, showed up on the scene and didn't consider it robbery. And
Mm-hmm.
he went through the wilderness. Now we already know he could have canceled that out, but
Yeah.
he chose to experience that so we would learn that the wilderness is necessary. When I first got saved, I didn't know nothing about a wilderness experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment I began to have experiences in my life that weren't fun, then it was like, okay, now what's going on? And that's when it was God's time to teach me. Your
Mm-hmm.
mom had taught me earlier and gave me the basics and different things like that, but now God was literally saying, it's me and you.
So let me ask you this. Can you explain to people that, maybe didn't grow up in church, and what the wilderness experience means? What does that mean?
Absolutely. At the time, you see several experiences in the Bible, and during the time of Israel, it was a wandering around. For Jesus, it was a setting the tone, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times in our lives where, you went to school, you knew what time to get up, you knew
Mm-hmm.
what time to get to school, you knew basically what the teacher was going to teach based on their lesson plans and what they shared with you. But what happens for that high school student who graduates high school but didn't have a plan? didn't know about college, or they had college in mind, but didn't know what to major in. Or you could be someone who went through a divorce, or you went through a traumatic experience, and all of a sudden now it's what's next. Your house got hit majorly, and you find yourself in the wilderness, kind of in a dry place, kind of in a place of question, and don't have the answers. And in Jesus's case, he had the answer. He is the answer. But we're not necessarily like Jesus always in all cases. You know, sometimes we may have the answer and say, "Oh man, that's good." But there are times when you just don't have it. You
Yeah.
just don't know what's going to be the next step. And there, your brain is blown. You've got kids to feed. Perhaps you have an elderly parent. You've got situations upon you. And it's like, I've never been here before. I don't know what this is. I don't like it. And yet, it's not just going to erase away. It's not going to move. It's not going to jump off the planet. You have to deal. My
Yes.
father was in the hospital, and that was weird to me and our family because he had been the rock
Yeah.
of our family
Yeah.
since I can. He was Superman, and
Mm-hmm.
so when I watched him wasting away, if you will, because they gave him a medication that he should have never had at his age. He was 79 at the time, and next thing you know, he's laying in the hospital, a wee bit delirious, and not able to really put his sentences together. And seeing him in that state,
Yeah.
I was like, God, what is this? This is not what we expected. We felt this when my brother died many years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
here we are again with the man of our home, and you know, of our family. And even though I'm grown with grown children, you
Mm-hmm.
know, he still was Superman to me. So people experience those things, but there are just times where you just don't have the answers.
And you know what I think is really good is that everybody's wilderness can one be different, and
Exactly.
you don't just have one wilderness, you have multiple. Just keep living. You will have
Exactly.
multiple wilderness.
Exactly.
So now let me ask you this. Do you feel that your book is more so about getting through those different wilderness in your life?
A part of it, yes, because again, we're talking about leaders. A lot of times, when you start a business, start your ministry, you're getting ready to help other people, you know what happens. I play it like this. My mother, when I was growing up, she would invite people to the home for dinner, and I would watch her make sure everybody was taken care of, from the home being comfortable and quaint to everybody getting their meal. But I would also watch her be the last one to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And she would literally sit there, and I would watch her, and she'd say to me and my brother, "Do you want anything else?" And I said, "Ma, are you going to eat?" I find that leaders, when they start taking care of other people, they say, "Well, I'll get to me later." And so if you don't go and make sure that you secure your spot, in other words, have your blessed place, have your time, you're helping other people grow, develop in whatever capacity
Yeah.
that you work in, but you forgot about you. And that was something else that God had to remind me of.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have the wilderness experiences, and you're going to also have the times where you're going to have to pull away. You're going to have to know how to say no. You're going to have to know how to pull away and take care of you. Drink that water, eat that healthy food, take you a break. You
Mm-hmm.
know, hence the reason the subtopic of the book is rest, reflect, and be renewed. And going through life, those things are important and imperative that you go back and not just go through something, but learn the why of it all,
That's
so
good.
that if there are things you need to remember, so you can teach them to somebody else, or maybe there are some things that will help you, so that when an issue comes up again, you can address it with a better situation or a better mindset.
Definitely, definitely. And Nikita actually said that this is a straight to the point book, and she really loves the book. Shout out to Stuart also for watching the show. If you're just now tuning in, you're watching Authors to Know and Their Books to Read, and our guest author today is Tracey George, and she has written a
Hi,
book
everybody.
called The Blessed Place. So we're just talking about the book. If you have any questions for Tracey, make sure you go ahead and um, shoot those in the comment field, and I'll ask that question to Tracey. So let me ask you something. Um, it's not, the book isn't just written for ministry leaders, but is, do you feel that the target audience of the book is for just any leaders in general?
Any leaders in general. I was a leader in the military, and the military, for those who are vets, they know your hours were whatever they said, your days were whatever they said. You signed up for that. But
Mhm.
then you had to make sure to take care of yourself. And everybody doesn't step in and say, "Are you good?"
Yeah.
So you have to ask that of yourself. Am I good? Am I okay? And take that time. Some units would set it up where you had a little bit of time off. They'd give you a couple of hours extra and different things like that. Because what kind of soldier would you be going out to war and you don't have your mindset together?
Mhm.
And so I thought about that. I said, it's not just in ministry, it's not just in military, it's everywhere. You
Mhm.
have to take care of you. We're seeing a lot of people commit suicide from so many different angles because they did not have that place to vent. They didn't have that place to reflect and kind of get themselves together so they can give their 100% to somebody else or give of themselves without depleting in the process.
That is really good that you mentioned that. How would you speak to those individuals though that say to themselves they're giving all they can to people and others, but they tell themselves, okay, I'm just sacrificing myself for others. How do you balance that in taking care of yourself and not going into the wrong idea of just sacrificing yourself, that like you said, you're depleting yourself, to the point that now somebody else is going to have to start taking care of you.
I have a book coming called The Balancing Act, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very important that you find balance. The power of no. I tell people often, you gotta know when to plug it in. There are going to be times when folks are going to pull on you, but you have to pull away and allow yourself that moment or opportunity to rest. It has to be included in your leadership plan. It's got
Mm-hmm.
to be one of your strategies, a part of your taking care of you. I preached a sermon some years ago. When will the leaders eat? You have to
That's
get
so
back to.
good, Tracey. Y'all need to be in South Carolina. If you're not in South Carolina, then what's your problem?
But yeah, a lot of the stuff that I write and that I minister uh, is teachings that God has given me over the course of the years. I found out that if you're not resting well, many go to sleep, but they're not resting. And
Mm-hmm.
so they close their eyes and they open them back to issues. They went to sleep with problems and they woke up with those same problems, not
Yeah.
realizing that they have to shut that stuff off. You got to leave the business at the business sometimes. You got
Mm-hmm.
to leave the desk at the office because if you're not careful, you'll take all that stuff into your safe place or into your resting place. There has to be a place that is off limits to the work. It has to be a place that is off limits to the day-to-day grind. Because if everywhere you go, you're only reminded of the grind, then when are you going to rest? When are you going to get the opportunity to be renewed? That's hard because me, I'm constantly thinking about what I'm going to write next.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Even having children, how are they doing? What's the next game? And if my daughter, who runs a daycare, has her and another person are co-owners. And so she started doing stuff early in life. So, she's still daughter. So, I'm
Yeah.
looking in on her. And then my son, who's the eldest, he's turning 24 this year. So I'm still checking in with him to make sure he's hitting his goals and doing all this. So that can be a lot of pressure. And then elderly parents. My mother will be 80 next year, and my father turns 82 in a few days. And so I check in with them to make sure they're eating right, make sure they're taking their vitamins, and make sure they're not drinking all them sodas and eating all that sugar. And I want you here a couple of more years. So they call me mama now and everything. But we've sat down. My father said something to me very interesting, because the Blessed Place is in the process of becoming a series. I wrote the Blessed Place workbook and Stay in Your Blessed Place. So we're working to put that into a series packet. And my father said, you might want to go and pull the Blessed Place back out, because many may still not understand what it is having that blessed place for themselves. And I said, you know what, Dad, you're right. He said, I'm just now getting it. And look how old I am. Because my father was getting up every morning, going to the gym. He was still, doing stuff with the school he had retired from as an assistant principal. He was still going to make sure that folks were okay. Well, his background, he passed it down to me as Jamaican. So, the story about the Jamaicans, and so I said, Dad, look what you did to us, And he said, well, before me it was your Nana. So, you got your hands in everything. But the father had to tell me to slow down. And he had to tell me, take your family and go on a trip. I started cruising. And when I go on a cruise, the first two that I went on, I went to preach. So I didn't experience what the cruise had to offer.
You said you went on a cruise and you went to preach on the cruise?
Yes. My play aunt, Deidre, she had a thing that she called Worship on the Waters. And my godfather told her, I have a goddaughter who lives in South Carolina. I think she'll be interested. And the next thing you know, not only was I traveling there, but I got on the ship and I preached not once but twice and sung. And so when the Lord said, I didn't create that for that. I want you to go and enjoy yourself. So now my daughter, she keeps me up to date with the cruising and everything. And we go, and she said, Mom, you're not here to minister to nobody but yourself. This is for you. Good. So we play back and forth and take each other on cruises. And now we've made it a mother-daughter thing.
That's excellent. That's so good.
Yeah.
And Natara, is that how you pronounce her name?
Natara,
okay. So she said thanks, Mom. Shout out to Kenneth James as well. And
that's my son.
Okay. Hey, Kenneth. And Alandria also that's watching the show. So Jamiah said, holding in everything and hoarding personal problems wear you down very easily and makes you go to a place. Auntie Tracey George taught me that you have to let go. That's excellent. So now, guys, I know that you're wondering, like, man, this book sounds solid. It sounds like a good book, and I want to get it. If you are interested in purchasing Tracey's book, make sure that you go to her website. The website link is actually in the description box, and you can actually order her book from there. So now, Tracey, on the cover of your book, it actually says, along the course of life, take the time to evaluate where you are. Why do you feel like that's important to do?
Because a lot of times in life, we allow other people to tell us. And then before you know it, everybody else's voice is more important and you start losing your voice. You have to be able to take the time to literally consider, where am I? Because when you do that, then you put yourself in the position of student, where you can be taught by God. You also put yourself in the position where he gave us the keys, that you can take your keys and begin to unlock some things that you didn't think were available to you. If you're not careful and you don't really take the time to consider where you are, then stuff starts creeping up on you and you begin to believe this is what's supposed to be, instead of understanding, man, I don't have to journey through life doing the same things. For example, uh, we see in many of our communities, when a health crisis hits, it
Mhm.
may hit grandma, it may have hit great grandma, but somehow it leaked right on through till now you're facing the same crisis that they faced years ago. But
Mhm.
you didn't consider, if I change my eating, if I eliminate some of the stress in my life, if I learn to say no, then these things will not affect me, or
Mhm.
it won't affect me to the point that it affected them. I paid attention to what my grandmother and my grandfather and different ones experienced in life. And so I had to consider, you are their offspring, you
Mhm.
are the direct lineage of this particular family. And if
Mhm.
you don't say nothing, if you don't do anything, if you don't go and take care of yourself and really consider your situation, then it can slip right up on you. And before you know it, prevention is out of the question. Now you have to learn how to maintain.
Right, right. And I know that one of the problems that I had personally with starting my own business and, just going full time with it, I realized that I wasn't sleeping well. And, I was going to bed, I was going to bed at a late time, but I always go to bed late. I was going to bed at a later time, but I wasn't falling asleep. Like I'll go to bed at 12, but I wasn't falling asleep until 3. And then I would wake up at 5, things like that. What did you do to, I guess, turn your mind off from the daily things that you're responsible for?
That's a great question. One of the things I did was, well, let me take you back to when I was about 12. I used
Mhm.
to talk to myself all the time. And yes, I was the one that would talk and answer my own questions.
Uh-huh. We do it too. We just
You
put it
know,
on.
and so one day the Lord said, instead of talking to yourself, talk to me. And
Mhm.
that's what really started my prayer time. And I found that for me as a talker, it was very important to talk stuff out.
Yeah.
It was very important for me to have a conversation. And a lot of times you don't have access to people that want to hear your venting or your conversation. And
Mhm.
so what I did was I would talk to myself. I would literally talk to the Lord or just start talking. And I found that that began to alleviate the pressure or the things that I was dealing with. And of course, once my kids got to an age where they could understand, they became the sound off board to a lot of stuff that, not personal issues, but of
Yeah.
course, business ideas and different things like that. I still have access to my mother. I try to tell people, those people that you trust, there may be one or two, there may be only one, that you know that you can talk to. Sometimes that is a very beautiful way to alleviate the pressure and to vent, because sometimes you have to vent. The Bible said, be angry and sin not. So a lot of times folks will hoard that stuff, like my niece said, and
Mhm.
just keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
But you have to let go and you have to relieve that self, so that stuff. So if there's something about the business, if you have a business partner, if you have somebody within the business you can trust, then release that and get
Mhm.
that off of you. If it's
Mhm.
personal situations, then somebody that you can trust personally. A lot of folks do not believe in counseling or mediation
Yeah.
or things of that, but it's very important. And then you come up with those couple of things that you know work for you, because every answer is not going to work for everybody. For
Mhm.
me, every now and then I chat with my mother, or my kids will get in here and I'll talk to them. Everybody doesn't have children, or their mother might not still be living. So you have to develop those things that work for you. And that means trying some things out and then saying to yourself, here comes that thinking and kind of seeing where you are and beginning to realize, okay, that didn't work, but this does. So if
Mhm.
this works, then you take that and
Yeah.
run with it
That's
and
good.
milk that thing until you can't do it. For some, it's not talking. For some, it's getting in a quiet spot with a cup of coffee or tea and just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
Sometimes that works for me as well. And so it can be a combination of things, but using those things that you have found to work for you and work them and literally do them on purpose. Sometimes your girl has to go and get in the car and drive and just, go on a trip, go on a vacation, whatever it is, implement those things purposefully in your life.
That's good. That's good. And so we actually had Betty Hall that just made a comment, and she said that this is good stuff. And she said that writing works for her.
Yes.
And Nikita said that stress is just one of her um, stress was just one of her issues, and she's really working on it. So Nikita, I just have a question for you right quick. Can you just let us know how you are working on it while we ask Tracey this next question? So can you just walk us through your book, The Blessed Place, and let us know a little bit more about it?
Absolutely. Well, I started touching on the three words that God gave me. It started actually as a sermon. I preached the blessed place, and the Father said, "You're going to write it." And so I started writing, and the three words he gave me was rest, reflect, and be renewed. The word rest means to cease work or movement in order to relax, refresh oneself, or to recover strength. I was fascinated that the Bible told us in Genesis that when God had finished that stretch of creativity, that he rested. So I was like, wait a minute, because the Bible says you don't slumber or sleep. So if you don't slumber or sleep, then, and so, yeah, so I had the conversation. And what I found is he ceased from work before starting something new. So I said, many times we are the kind that grasshopper. We go from one thing to the next with no pause, with no moment of selah, with no ceasing of work. We will celebrate the highs from this situation and then jump into a new situation. You see it with marriages, you see it with families, you see it, even the doctor will tell a mother, take some time before having another child. You know, we as counselors will tell people, you just got out of a wonderful relationship. It dissolved itself. Now take some time for you to reflect on what it is that you want to do next before jumping into a new relationship. You see folks get divorced, or they're not even divorced yet. They're separated and they're dating someone new, and they're not dealing with the lessons. They're not dealing with any nuances that need to be dealt with. So that's rest. And then when you deal with the word reflect, it means to think deeply or carefully about something, to study it, to consider. So once you're resting, your mind is starting to clear up of some stuff. Now you can take the time to revisit the problem, revisit the issue. You may find in, like with marriages that dissolve, that it wasn't just one person that had the issue, it was two people. And so you can begin to heal and forgive yourself and forgive the other person, so you're not carrying the baggage into a new relationship. Maybe you messed up at school and that you were on probation or whatever the case may be. And instead of you just saying, bump that school, I'm going to a new one, you need to reflect and touch base with, why am I having an issue? Because, some kids will just, they go to a new school, forget that school. They don't know me. I'm going to a new school. So, but this might be your opportunity, because when you reflect on things, you find yourself growing. This is where maturity comes in. And so I found a lot of people struggle with the word perfect. When we think perfect, we think only God. But there are two sides to perfect. You have perfect, which is just lacking nothing, pure. But then you have the side of perfect that means spiritually mature. And so when the Father said, that's your side, my side is pure. Your side is spiritual maturity, which means we don't have to keep telling people we're only human.
Mhm.
because then you're just repeating something that is already well known. We know
Right.
you're human.
Yeah.
So knowing you're human, you also know that you will have frailties. You will have mistakes. You will have issues. You will get it wrong. You will, and you don't have to keep telling people that. You already know,
Mhm.
because I am not perfect in the sense of God. Then there are going to
Mhm.
be things that attach themselves to me through decision, through planning, through whatever. You may create 4 businesses and only one of them work. You may
Admit to
actually
that.
come on. And so God had to show me, stop stressing over the stuff.
Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
knew you were going to fall. I knew you were going to miss it. I knew that every marriage wasn't going to hit 30 and 40 and 50. My parents just celebrated, what was it, 53 years. And so my marriage ended right at 10. And
Mhm.
so I felt like a failure. And
Mhm.
the Father had to show me, you didn't fail in the sense that you think, so
Mhm.
that now you shun any future situations and circumstances because you feel like it just can't be done. And a lot of people are running around here with the stress of the frailties,
Mhm.
not realizing we're human. But when you reflect on, you learn lessons. You
Mhm.
get those gifts of lessons, those nuggets that could only come through your experiences or the experiences of another. And the last word is be renewed.
Mhm.
That means to resume activity after an interruption. Peter sat there and had some issues. He went and sat in the middle of the ocean feeling sorry for himself. But the Father in the flesh told Peter, do you love me?
Mhm.
Then he said, go feed my sheep. In other words, you've had the moment to rest, you've had the moment to reflect. But now it's time to get back to work. And that's the thing that sometimes hurts folks, because I've been through so much, I'm done. And when you start saying that about yourself, and I was there, I was ready to quit. I was
Mhm.
like, God, how could you use me? How could I be effective in another man's life? Look at what I'm doing. Look what happened to me. How can I help them? He said, you can share your experiences, because now they're lessons learned, they're gifts given, and you can give those to someone else who might be considering quitting, might be considering giving up. But now they can be renewed, and they can resume activity that they thought would never happen for them.
Yeah, yeah, that's excellent. And I have a question for you um with the reflecting part on it. How do you feel that sometimes people aren't honest with themselves of why they're in a situation that they're in, and do you advise them to possibly talk to someone that loves them but will be honest with them to give them their perspective of why they're in that situation that they're in?
Excellent question. Because oftentimes, when we take the rest and we peel back the mask, we can be honest about how we got here. Hence the reason to reflect, to think deeply. Because that mask, and you see it in jobs, businesses, churches, ministries, families, when you begin to realize it's me, I'm dealing with just me, and what's really here. If you already were covering it up, if you are already trying to hide it or trying to create a new story about it, then yes, you need some help to really hone in on what the real issues are. Because even in dealing with yourself and trying to reflect or whatever, you've got to decide what the real issues are. Because
Mm.
you might still be saying, oh,
Yeah.
he threw his underwear on the ground, and
You
and
know
and
I
he
hate
might
that.
or you may be sitting there thinking, well, he kept leaving his cup on the counter. And it's not that. The seat up, the seat down, it's none of those things. What was it that caused you to come together? Because it might be in the coming together. The business you started, Was it really something you wanted to do, or you saw somebody else be successful with it and decided, I want to do what I saw them do? So you got to go back to the beginning of things and really hone in on the truth. And if you can't do that successfully for yourself, then you need somebody else with a pair of objective eyes to poke in and be able to say, did you ever think about so and so and so and so? And then you can say, you know what? I never thought about that. Or I thought about it, but I never considered it concerning me.
And that is such a good point that you were saying, some bringing somebody in that's objective, because I always look at my golf game. So I enjoy playing golf.
Okay.
And I was talking to my friend, and I was telling him, I said, it's good for you to have a coach, or somebody that can really just look at your game and just look at your swing and everything like that. I said, because if you go out there and you practicing and you hitting the ball, and you have already created that foundation of wrong things to do, you just repeating the wrong things to do. So that's why you need to bring that coach so he can help you possibly,
That's right.
to see the things that
That's right.
you need to just tweak and change. Why do you feel that your book, The Blessed Place, is really needed for our bookshelves? What do you think?
I take it as a manual, something, every now and then you get a book that requires usage in your life, in your journey. There are certain things we tend to get so caught up in the mundaneness of life, or the journey itself, that we forget to take those pauses. So it's good to have things that will help you and guide you in your process. I pull out the blessed place and go back to the scriptures, go back to the things that God told me, to remind myself, oh, yes, yes. When I'm not getting the rest that I need, okay, Trey, remember, pull back, pull back. When I want to tell somebody yes, and I hear in the back of my thoughts, no, you needed to say no.
Yeah.
These are things that remind me. So having that book or books on your shelf that help you in your journey, those are essential, because you have to take care of you. It's no different than I have the green smoothie book on my shelf, so that to remind me, girl, get in there and get them spinach and that kale,
Yeah.
and mix you up a nice one, so you can remember to take the veggies into your system. They're just certain books that are important to have. Miles Monroe, who's no longer with us, he, when I was a teenager, wrote the books dealing with potential, realizing your potential and releasing your potential. I still have those books on my shelf, and I still refer back to them, because if you're not careful, you can get stuck.
Yeah.
And you can get so stuck to the place that you're like, what do I do next? And having those things in place, because you may not always want to try to go find it in the Bible. Sometimes your mind is so all over the place already that you need somebody who has a specific topic, a specific thing they address, that you need to hit right now. And you can go, and they have already organized certain thoughts, certain quotes, certain scripture, whatever that they use to write their book, that can help you. And you can highlight all you want, and write notes on the corner, and it becomes that go-to guide. And then when you have used it, you can pass it on to one of your children. You can, give it to them, give it to a mentee, somebody, and say, look, I need you to take this, use my notes and everything, and they can build off of it and grow and do what they need to do.
That's good. That's good. Now, if you're just now tuning into the show, where you been? Um, um, we actually have author Tracey George on the show. She's telling us more about her book, The Blessed Place. So, Tracey, can you tell us more about your company, TGAP Systems, and the services that you actually provide?
Okay. TGAP system started some years ago when folks were connecting with me, and I was still new to business and all of this. And so TGAP means Tracey George Alliance Project. And it was all the different groups that were aligning with me, where we were like-minded and had common goals. And so it became that. And then after a while, I shortened it to the initials just to keep up with all the different things I do in a day.
Yeah.
And so I have folks that assist me, you know, and so when I travel or different things like that, or doing books or different things, they don't, if they can't catch up with me, they can catch up with somebody that's involved in TGAP. And some of the things that we are involved in, I have the school, the core outreach network was the starting point on this leg of the journey. But and so that became a kind of face-to-face sort of thing. And so we have been, that leg of it has been in inception since 2005. It
Okay.
all got started in 1998, and a couple of years ago, we celebrated our 20th of officially doing ministry and all
That's
that kind of stuff.
good.
And, you know, not including all the stuff I did prior to that, but more in an organized manner.
Hmm.
And so we have the Core Training Institute where we do classes online. I do individual stuff. I do group work because I'm finding that a lot of folks, especially leaders, do not take care of themselves, and they're not concerned with, you know, kind of freeing themselves up of stressors and venting and all this kind of stuff. So I try to make myself or avail myself so that you can get that and not feel like you're less anointed or anything like that, or feel less of a leader because you needed that time. And
That's
so
good.
we provide that. We also were finishing up a class where I took some of the core outreach folks and just to help them start up business. So we help you with all of that. We
Hmm.
help you get going. A lot of leaders didn't realize they could be out here writing books, making it hard for themselves, and could be pulling their sermons and just really putting that stuff together and opening some doors for themselves to speak in areas that they never considered speaking in, because a lot of preachers are still just speaking in the churches and don't realize that dad has opened the door and allow for you to speak in different areas and arenas where people need the same word and
Yeah.
the same information.
That's good. That's good. So now I know that we were talking about just bringing someone else into your life if you needed them to just be objective, those objective eyes to you. And I know that you are also a coach. Can you let them know a little bit more about that?
Oh, yes. It was amazing how I stumbled across coaching.
Uh-huh.
And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, you know, funny, but the young lady, she has a program called the Life Institute. I think I'm saying the school right. But this was back in 2011, 2012, somewhere up in there.
Mhm.
Um, I Somebody sent me some information and I was like, wow, let me check this out.
Uh-huh.
And when I started talking to the lady who owned the school, she said, it sounds like you've been doing this all your life. And you're just now coming in, you know, and it was such a welcome refreshment. Well,
Uh-huh.
hello.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so from there, you know, because I would counsel in school, I would coach folks. I didn't know what I was doing, just simply doing what came natural to me. And
Uh-huh.
so now we had a name to it. And we sat in her school, and next thing you know, we graduated and went on from there. And she would call me back from time to time to either teach or share with some of the newer students and stuff like that. So it was just a great thing. But we came into coaching, which kind of took my degree in ministry and married them together. You
Mhm.
know, my background is in counseling and social work. And so the stuff that I was already doing and sitting down trying to help my clients navigate through life and make some good decisions about themselves. And being in the mental health, mental retardation field, a lot of times folks didn't think that they could come to a place of normalcy for themselves and be able to be successful. And so I was seeing it happen all the time. And so taking that and marrying it to ministry and being able to help people, because everybody's not going to sit inside the church walls. themselves. But yet, many would like to have that connection with the Lord and be able to make conscious decisions and do what they need to do to build their family and start their businesses and ministry. And so, coaching brings that into perspective, and it allows you to be able to make your good decisions and not have everybody else having to make it for you. But then you're learning how to take what you have grown upon, your schooling, your whatevers, and be able to do some really great things.
Definitely, definitely. So now, if you feel that you need somebody to just be objective in your life, that's not a family member, not a friend, someone that is not going to judge you, make sure you go ahead and visit Tracy's website so you can go ahead and contact her and let her know that you're interested in her coaching services. Tracy, thank you
Awesome.
so much for being on the show and telling us a lot more about your book called The Blessed Place. It really sounds like an excellent book, and just from the comments alone, so many people are just saying, it's a great gift to give to someone. It's just really been
Awesome.
tremendous in their own life. And so, be honest with yourself, viewers. If this is something that that you really need, you weren't created to be superhuman, and it's okay to have that rest, but it's even more wiser to get a resource that's going to teach you how to just have that rest and help you to just reflect and be renewed in your life. So make sure that you go to Tracy's website so you can purchase that book. I do want to thank you guys for just taking your time to watch the show. Also, thank you for just posting your comments on the show, just to make the show a lot more interactive as well. Tracy, I hope that you have a great night, and we
Absolutely.
will talk to you all later. Bye bye.
Bye bye, everybody.